real work before this. At any time before this, whenever it was real work. I'm just here. I just showed up.
But that's okay, because you have done lots of work in your time.
I guess technically I did real work before this, but on other things, yes.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about games. Is that really real work?
That's a great question.
Yes.
We have
The answer's yes.
Yes.
It pays real money.
Sometimes. But we have a set of prepared questions that are going to be on these slides, and I'll try to get through them quickly so that you can all ask Davey questions. Sound good? Let's do it. There we go. Okay.
Oh my God, no. No, get it off. No.
Well,
No.
first question that's not on the slide, but what is this from?
Wait. Oh my gosh, this is. Oh, I know what this is. Okay, this is from a student film I did in college. God, yeah, I did a student film in college, which was, oh my God, it was like a recursive film within a film. It was very like on brand, I guess. But like, looking back now, it's weird. I don't know. That's a different guy. It feels like.
I could have taken a worse frame from that, so.
Well, thank you. I guess that means a lot to me, Jared. Thank you so much. It's a real bond we've got here.
So how did you start making games?
How did I start making games? So I got into Half-Life 2 modding when I was in college. There were a number of really amazing Half-Life 2 mods that came out around that time, like Dear Esther and Radiator, and those were really influential for me. And the realization that I could just download this software and just start doing it, which there were not a tremendous amount of options at that time, especially if you wanted to do anything in 3D. I just realized that it was actually feasible to do, and that it was something that anyone could just do in their room. And and it was kind of off to the races from there. It's like, okay, I had all this, angsty 19-year-old energy, right? I was like, yeah, here we go. I'm gonna show them all, it's that kind of thing.
Well, we will get to some of that in a bit.
Oh God, how many photos do you have in here?
Okay. How did you end up in Vancouver, and what do you think draws developers to the city?
So I grew up in Sacramento, in California, and have been here for about 4 years. And I love Vancouver. It's my favorite place in the world, and a lot of people come here have a lot of different reasons for it. I know that for me, getting out of the United States was easy peasy. I had no problem with that. And obviously, like, the weather here is amazing. Well, I think the weather here is amazing, and the nature and the beauty and the community and the peers and the people that I have around me. It seems like a lot of people are looking to get out of a place that they don't love. Canada is not perfect. Nobody's saying Canada's perfect. There's a lot of places out there that are a lot worse. And I think that for a number of people that I know, it's been amazing to come to a place that feels like it's less on fire, and being in Canada, being able to be in Vancouver, here where it's so pleasant and beautiful. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's almost like everything like filters toward this one spot, like if you have a certain kind of inclination, everything just seems to lead here. I think for a lot of people, that kind of like magnetism seems to have brought them here to the area.
Cool, yeah. I'm pretty new to the game scene, so coming to events like this, I hear from people who have been here in Vancouver and been a part of the indie scene here for much, much longer, and I always learn a little bit more about the history of the city, so it's really nice to hear how long that tradition's been around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, get another one.
No, okay, no, this is from the film. This is from the same film. Again, movie within a movie, blah, 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 I don't know, whatever. Charlie Kaufman already did it, whatever, who cares?
Well, speaking of what you worked on in film school, how do you think film school affects your game dev process?
Film school was, for me personally, it was tough because I went into film school because it seemed more legitimate than going into video games, at least at that time. There were, the options for going into game school were just, it wasn't as, let's say, easy to explain to your parents, right? And whereas film had more of there was a little bit more reputation, a little bit more prestige around it. So I went into film school, and then really, I think the biggest thing that film school did for me was that it, you go to film school, and you're like, I like movies. Movies are cool, right? We all like movies. And then you go to film school, and you're surrounded by all these people who are your age, and they're like, I will die for movies. I will do anything for movies. And you're like, I'm competing against those people for 4 total jobs. And it's brutal. Nobody in film is happy, They're real, and they love it, it's great. They're not happy, nobody's happy, Not that everybody in games is happy, but there's the possibility of good things here in games. There's salaried jobs, for example. But I loved games, and there was this really big realization that if you don't actually love this extremely difficult and competitive industry, there's just no possible way you'll be able to do it. And that was the biggest lesson that I think I got from film school, and that was kind of why I steered back toward games, is realizing this is the only thing where I have a chance of actually doing anything because I actually love it,
Wow. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, if you saw some of the lectures that my film teachers gave, oh man, it was rough stuff. I had a teacher, the prestigious teacher of the whole school, the most beloved guy, gave an actual honest to God full hour lecture on the death of cinema. He was this was literally the guy that everybody, and they're yeah, let me tell you about how film is dying and you kids are killing it. I mean, it was full on. I'm not even exaggerating. That's exactly it.
Wow. Okay. So if you ever teach a game school program, is that what you'll tell them?
That's exactly what I'm going to say to them. I used to be great. I had something good going, and then all of you came along. They're all use their AI to write a story and be like,
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, perfect.
Ooh, spoilers ahead.
Ooh.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about games.
Let's talk about video games. Not about film. Why are we talking about film? I don't come here to talk about film. Stanley Parable.
There it is.
Hey.
Were there any games or other forms of media that were big inspirations for the Stanley Parable specifically?
Well, like I said about getting into source modding, this was right at the very. This was the hints of the indie boom about to happen. You had Dear Esther, which had just come out. Robert Yang made Radiator. Telltales was making things like The Graveyard and The Path. And there's these games that did not have. Jason Rohrer was doing his early stuff. There were these games that were just not like anything else out there, and it was the most exciting thing to realize you didn't have to make a game by throwing a million things on the screen all at once, and I mean, God, there's just no time like that, just this magical convergence of new ideas happening. In games, things like Half-Life and Metal Gear Solid were, from a storytelling perspective, very exciting to think that you could tell a story that wasn't just a good story, but actually was a visceral story, a story that made you sit up and go, oh my God, I didn't know that, which was the kind of thing that I got out of a lot of my favorite movies, which was this incredibly visceral feeling. I mean, when I was that age, I was really, really into like twists in movies. You know, you get to the end of like Memento or whatever. That was the most exciting feeling. This like visceral in your body kind of thing. And I know that sitting down to think about Stanley Parable, that was what excited me at the time. It was this sense that maybe it's possible to, because Source was good at two things. It was good at hallways, and it's good at guns. And those are really the only two things that Source is good at. And so I didn't want to do guns, and I also was just not really feasible. So I was like, hallways. And hallways it is. And you can stream voiceover very cheaply. Like, that is not hard to produce, right? You just find someone and just talk to them. I'm doing it right now. And so it just made a lot of practical sense. And the challenge for me at that time was these other pieces of media that are affecting me in this way. These games, you know, again, like a Half-Life, or like a Chris Nolan movie or a Charlie Kaufman movie. You know, these things that a Steven Soderbergh movie that were designed to elicit such a visceral reaction. How close could I get to doing that with just hallways and talking? You know, it was the challenge that felt impossible. And so again, 19-year-old energy. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna do that, and that was the aspiration that really kicked it into gear. Made me want to explore.
Wow, hallways.
Hallways, baby.
Ooh, okay, hold on. Let's come back to this. Since we've been mentioning mods a lot, how did you go? What led you to go from mod to, I guess, full standalone game?
It's interesting because there's a lot of people who will ask me about being a part of the mod scene. I never really felt like I was a part of the mod scene. I remember putting Stanley Parable up and having people be like, technically this is a map, not a mod, which is true, which is technically true. But you know, people were out there making like actual modifications to games that like added gameplay, for instance. And so I always kind of felt, you know, like I wasn't really ever a part of that. Honestly, the only thing about modding that was appealing to me was that you could literally technically do it, right? Every other option was just not an option at that time. I mean, if Unity existed back then, I would have just downloaded Unity. So I never thought about it in terms of modding specifically being an avenue. I literally just thought in terms of like the tool being accessible, and I wasn't very good at the tools, even the ones that were accessible. So when William Pugh, who was my collaborator on the full release of the game, when he came to me and he was like, "Hey, I would like to help you make this into something real," and he actually knew what he was doing. It was very exciting, you know, because then suddenly we could make something that actually looked like a full production, and he was very, very good at that. And I'm just eternally grateful that he came along and made it all possible. Really, you know.
You really made some nice hallways.
Oh, dude, his hallways. You gotta see these hallways. Believe me, man. He did. I mean, we say that, but like, there's a lot of ways that you could have made hallways look really boring. He managed to make hallways look real good.
Yes. That thing doesn't have a way to go back, so I'm gonna go back here. Okay. Other game. Inspirations for the beginner's guide.
Gosh. You know, there were obviously, you can, I'm sure it's not hard to imagine, you know, again, Charlie Kaufman, right? Something like adaptation being like, okay, I watched that, like, whoa, this is so cool. But the big one, the one that really clicked it into place was, so everybody's seen The Princess Bride, right? And said everybody's seated. But a lot of people don't know that Princess Bride started as a book, written by the same guy, written by William Goldman. And what's really cool about the book, so in the movie, the movie is framed by the grandfather and little baby Fred Savage talking, reading the Princess Bride, the book. And in the book version of The Princess Bride, William Goldman, the author of the book, opens the book by saying, I'm about to tell you, this is an abridged version of the story of The Princess Bride by, oh my God, what's the name? The name of the guy. Morgenstern. He's like, this is Morgenstern's classic novel, abridged. I'm bringing you the abridgment of it. This is as my father told it to me when he was a kid. And so he takes Morgenstern's novel, The Princess Bride, and just relates it to you, but every now and then he stops and says, and this is where my father cut this part out of the book when he was reading it. And then goes on and pontificates a little bit about his what it was like for reading it as a child and how he interpreted it then and how he interpreted it now. So I finished reading the book because I had obviously seen the movie, and then I finished reading the book because my friend had said, "Oh, you got to read The Princess Bride." And I called up my friend. I was like, "Oh man, I loved the book. It was so good, and it's so interesting what he kept in Morgenstern's." What he kept and what he left out of Morgenstern's version. And she was like, dude, that's not real. That's not real. That's fake. And the thing that got me, like, I was on the edge. I was like, is this real? And then the thing that got me was they printed the fucking jacket quote. It was like a University of Michigan professor, so-and-so says, at last, Morgenstern's classic novel has been adapted for I read the jacket quote, and that was what tipped me onto the side of this is real. And that was like one of these like, whoa things. And I remember finishing that book and setting it down, and it was like suddenly flashing into my mind. I was like, no video game has ever done this before. And that, I don't know, it's just this moment where you're like, that's it. I have to make that. I have to. And then I just couldn't stop thinking about it after that. And that happened somewhere in the middle of while I was working on Stanley Parable. So I started actually queuing up things for it while I was doing Stanley. And then the final version of Beginner's Guide for those who haven't seen it is me, the literally me, Davey is talking through the works of a fictional person named Coda, and describing the various games that they made, and throughout a number of years that we were friends and talked and blah blah blah, and and let me show you and let me explain to you what this means and let me walk you through these, and sort of the relationship between me, the fictional narrator, and the fictional video game creator, and the relationship between those two things. And it really started with Princess Bride, and then that was kind of what I wanted to do. Was just in my mind it was very much like just like Princess Bride, and then sort of as time went on, as development got into it, began to kind of like morph it into its own weird thing, I suppose. Yeah.
A little darker than Princess Bride.
Well, so here's the thing. I meant for it to be very light and whimsical. And then, like I said, I was working on it while Stanley was being made, and then Stanley came out, and the reaction to Stanley was more intense than I anticipated. And I got went into a little bit of a dark place. I was a little overwhelmed. I had a tough time with the sort of vastness of that, and that was really kind of what pushed it into the place that it became. So yeah. So thank Stanley Parable getting big for it being a dark game, I guess. Maybe.
I think I would like to applaud the voice acting.
Oh, thank you so much. Hallways and voices, that's it. That's all it is. Thank you once again.
It's very good. You had me convinced.
Hey.
Okay. Why do you seem to love secrets and Easter eggs so much?
The bucket is a good screenshot for that. Why did secrets and Easter eggs? I think it's really thematic. It's really specific to the individual thing that you're working on. Stanley Parable obviously has lots of secrets and Easter eggs, and Beginner's Guide has basically none. And if you think about that, that's like, well, that's the core when you get to the core intentions of the game. Like the idea behind Beginner's Guide is that a person is explaining everything to you. So by definition, there can't be secrets because the person reviewing the game for you would have already known everything, so he would have pointed out any secret to you. So by definition, it can't have secrets, at least not in that traditional sense. And Stanley Parable is sort of, again, like thematically, what is it about? For me, what was really important to me going into this thing was that I wanted to make something that felt really alive. I wanted to make something that felt like it was kind of sitting over your shoulder while you played and kind of like poking at you, And there was really this sense of wanting to connect to a person on the other side of a screen. And I think that what helps people feel connected is a sense of organicness, right? Certainly right now with all the AI sort of talk that's going on, one of the big recurring things that people say about it is that, like, wow, a lot of this is very mechanical, A lot of this is very robotic. It feels like it's a repurposing of a repurposing of a repurposing. And the humanness that we're looking for is a spontaneity, right? Is for something to feel like it's surprising you. It's weird, I don't know what it is, but just being surprised is this human thing, right? That's like a person that you've known for your entire life, that you love, can still say things to you that surprise you, and that's like this magically human connection between people. And the idea with Stanley Parable was, can I get someone to feel that, but from the other side of a screen, however many miles, thousands of miles away. And the way to do that is surprise. And this was really only something that started to become clearer the more and more we went along, is that the ethos of this game is to feel like you are human, right? Which is of course the main character, Stanley, is kind of this like drone office worker. Does Stanley want to feel more human, right? I know I wanted to. I know I was scared of falling into a rut and being a drone person, and I want to feel more human. I want to feel more alive. Can I do that for someone else? And that way of doing it is secrets, Easter eggs. Every time you poke at a thing, it pokes back. Every time you explore somewhere, it talks to you about what you're doing. Every time you think you outwit it, it outwits you back. This squishy, organic sense of two very like living entities colliding in space. That's just the ethos of the game, and so that's what it needed,
Did you expect the Stanley Parable to be so well received, as you kind of touched that? And why do you think your games have resonated with so many people?
Gosh. I think the process of any like making anything creative that's like a vision that you have is like, it always, here's how it's always, this is the start of it. You're like, I'm such a fucking genius. This is the Gundam meme, basically. And then he's like, I'm such a genius, and then it goes along, and then you're not even 10% of the making the thing, and it dips down, and you're like, and it dips down to, not only is this terrible, what I'm working on, but I will be universally despised. You laugh, but this is super real. This is super real. You're
That's
like,
why we laugh.
yeah, I know. Okay, all right, we're on the same wavelength here. I mean, I can't tell you, every single thing that I've ever worked on has had like this moment in the middle where I was like, literally, I will be laughed out of the industry for this, you know. But it's like the start thing where I'm such a fucking genius. It's like, that's really helpful for getting you through to the end, you know. It's good to have that momentum, like something that you think back on. You're like, I don't know why, but I know that at one point I thought this was a really good idea. and then the thing comes out, and then people are like, it was a good idea, and you're like, huh, weird. What's the reality of this? It's hard to know. I don't really know anymore. I know that when I was like first set out to do this, yeah, I wanted to be like it's like I want everybody to like this, and I want everybody to, you know, and then it happened, and I was like, oh, I didn't, you know, it's like I didn't know that was actually gonna happen. I just wanted it, you know. And then, you know, it really changes because it's the, you know, you realize that it's actually like, in some ways it's not as fulfilling, you know, as you thought it was going to be. It's still amazing, it's still incredible, and I'm really glad, you know. But it's sometimes hard to look back at your, you know, like this is now. I mean, I'm almost like 15 years removed from starting the inception of Stanley Parable. Sometimes it's like it's a different me, you know, now. And I'm very grateful. I mean, it still feels like a child, you know, but it's just a child that's like about to go to college, you know, or whatever. Yeah, I don't really know why people connect with it, other than that there was a moment in time where I was super, super high on believing there was something really cool about it, and I pushed through to the end. And then somehow the math of that works out, you know. And I mean, to be fair, there's a huge amount of work in this middle bit, this like, I'm the stupidest human being I've ever alive, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna work really, really hard to try to get this out of being the worst video game ever made, right? And you work really, really hard to improve it and try to make it better and try to make it good. And just the act of doing that, I mean, it is about, like, I am trying to get people to like it. You know, I do want people to, it's not just about sitting and, you know, sniffing my farts over how great my first idea was. It's like, no, I'm working really hard to get it there. And so it's probably a combination of that first big thing that you think is so great, with all of the hard work that goes into it of finishing and shipping it and trying to get people to actually like it. Somewhere in the connecting point between those things is where you know, the actual magic of, oh, people react to it now and like it, somewhere there.
This question. Okay. How do you feel about people streaming and playing your game to an audience as like a form of performance? And does that now impact your creative process in any way?
It's funny, something that I was not anticipating about Stanley Parable that I've now heard a bunch of times is that it's something that I hear people say is really annoying for streamers. Because apparently this is like one of the more backseated games that people can stream. I hear about this and about Undertale, which is like, you know, people going into a stream, be like, go here, do this, go to the thing, go to the broom closet, go down there, jump off the thing. So apparently that's very annoying for people. I get it. I mean, back at the start of all of this, it was YouTube, right? Like back then, it was YouTubers doing all of this, and it's not. It hasn't I don't think it's fundamentally different. You know, you're still trying to make something that, you know, you obviously you sit and you imagine, but that's kind of how you imagine everybody playing. You imagine, like, is a person gonna play this who's not invested in it on a personal level? Are they gonna want to play through the whole thing? Like if someone's streaming and they're not having a good time and their audience is bored, like obviously they're gonna turn it off, you know? But I mean, that's kind of just, you know, getting people to like you know, to want to play your thing in general. I will say, it is, a thing I do find useful from a development perspective is that making a thing and assessing the thing you're making as you're going along. I find it really useful as a metric for myself to think about if a buddy of mine was watching me play this, would they want to go home and play it themselves, right? Or if I was playing this game or whatever, who's the person who I would be like, oh man, I gotta tell so-and-so about this, right? And that's just, which is just basic word of mouth stuff, right? But it's very, very, like streaming and the social media and everything now is very crystallized, right? It's like, okay, you can actually like see it happening in real time. You can watch in real time as the person is playing it and enjoying it, and then someone who's watching that wants to go home and pick it up. They're like, no, I don't want to watch any more of this. I want to play it for myself, right? I do think it's a useful metric at least. It's something very specific, right? It's something very concrete that I can kind of latch onto, and as a sort of poll when I'm lost in terms of like what audience is this for? I'm like, it's for the audience of people who would play it and then inspire someone else to want to go play it in whatever form that takes, you know? And yeah, it's just that streaming right now is this very visible one, you know? But before this, it was just, yeah, it was like, oh, I play it and then I tell someone else, you know, I tell my friend, you know, you go to school and you're like, oh, did you see the thing in Zelda where like blah blah blah? It's, you know, it's kind of just like an extrapolated version of that, I guess.
Yeah. Here we go. What has been the most memorable experience that came from making games that got popular?
Yeah, this is a photo of a real life auditorium with a. No, I'm kidding. This is not. This is a screenshot from inside Stanley Parable. God, the most memorable. There've been some memorable ones. I mean, God, being in friggin' House of Cards, that was crazy. It's a little weird now in hindsight, but believe me, at the time it was a big deal, you guys. Was that me? Did I do that sound over the microphone? I'm sorry. My apologies. Oh,
We're very excited.
I won't. Yeah, excuse me. I'll be less emotional. Yeah, that was cool. We were in the MoMA recently. That was pretty dope. My parents were happy about that. They were like, yeah. They were like, we can explain this to our friends. I think honestly, probably the most rewarding for me personally is connecting to people who I admire, because you know there's nothing like it. You know, I met Suda51 at PAX, you know, and I was like, oh my god, dude, like Killer 7, like, you know, was a formative thing for me as a kid. He was like, Stanley Parable's awesome, and it was this, you know, we had this moment, and I was like, what the Jesus, what is going on? That was wild, you know, things like that. Obviously, no surprise that Portal is influential for me, and after Stanley came out, Eric Wolpaw and Jay Pinkerton, the writers on Portal, they wrote me. They're like, "Hey, let's go get dinner," and just, Jesus, it's very very humbling, and I feel those are the things I feel the most grateful for, is connecting to those people. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's how I feel every time I get to do this event. What is something that you had to cut from a game that you really wish didn't have to get cut?
We were pretty fortunate on the things that I've put out so far that because they're mostly pretty logistically simple, that we haven't had a lot, like on the original. Excuse me, doing it again. On the original Stanley, there were like signs around the office, and we wanted those signs to randomize every time you restarted the game, and we just didn't have time. It was one of those literally if we were shipping the game tomorrow instead of today, we would get that in. But it's I can't believe we were literally playtesting that game to finalize it the night before we shipped. I don't know, it's insane. On Ultra Deluxe there was more, because Ultra Deluxe was a lot more complex. Because this was the Ultra Deluxe was the version of Stanley that we put out last year, the updated version. And that kind of one, there was more that we wanted to do. There were more little things that I was like, oh, can't we, blah blah blah. One of the things we talked about that we really wanted to put in, but we just never found a way to, was a speedrun variant of it. There's a number of sections in the game where it slows you down to have to listen to a bunch of dialogue. And what we realized after the game shipped was that players had found a way to glitch themselves to be able to jump as many times as they wanted. Because there's a circle that you can jump inside of, and they figured out a way to carry that ability with them into other parts of the game. And so we were going to patch in a thing where if you jumped over the railing, and right before one section where there was going to be a lot of long dialogue, then there would be a speed run course, like a platforming course. And the faster you did the platforms, the faster you could skip the dialogue. We really liked that idea. Unfortunately, it just, for a variety of reasons, it was we were like, wow, this is a lot of, the game had already shipped, people had already given it good reviews. It was like, there's nothing to be gained now. It was just a lot of work, and then we kind of we were like, I don't know, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. And then speedrunners figured out how way to circumvent that entire route, and we were like, okay, obviously it's a good thing we didn't put all that work into doing that. So that would have been funny, though.
It would have been pretty funny. Ooh, okay. Okay, before the question, would you like to describe what this game is?
This is a scene from a harrowing simulator of social inequity and the pursuit of greatness at all costs. This is a Ludum Dare game jam that I made with Pedro and Isa and our friend Ryan for Ludum Dare, was it a month ago or something like that? 2 months ago. Anyway, so what you do in this game is you're Daggers McBlack, that's you. And that's the memory of your dead grandma. And you're a delivery driver, and you gotta drive through town dodging cars to deliver packages. But Daggers McBlack is driven to succeed at all costs, and he's willing to push it to the limit. And so a little cell phone will appear from time to time, and you have to type out text messages to your clients to assure them that everything is going fine while you're driving and dodging cars. And then, so you have to type out responses to people, and then also Daggers will take drugs to keep his mind sharp. So then visual effects will start changing the screen, and you have to like shake your mouse to stay awake, or you'll start drifting to the left or the right. Anyway.
Yeah, so was this game based on any personal life experience?
I have taken drugs. Yeah, no, not directly. Not a specific personal experience in my past. What about you, Pedro? Was it a?
No.
No.
I don't drive. Is that text while driving?
It's very similar to text while driving.
Do you want to explain yourself now? Do you want to come up here and explain why texting while driving is fine and everyone should do it?
I shouldn't do it. It's bad.
Issa thinks that texting while driving is just fine. No, I don't know. None of us had ever. I think that's why it was fun, is because we were like, this is obviously a thing we would never ever do. We did get some responses from people that were like, I can't believe you would condone this. It was
Doing drugs and texting while driving.
Remember, kids, no, don't. Just,
Disclaimer if you want to have that.
huh?
We have the disclaimer.
We have a disclaimer at the end. It does explain that taking drugs while driving, while it may be fast, is cheating. So,
If you haven't played this, you really should play this. It's incredible.
it was fun. That was a really good time. Just hold up for a weekend and doing that. Yeah.
Ooh, okay, we're reaching the end. So, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice about making games, what would it be?
This is a really hard question because younger me wouldn't have taken any advice. Like that's the problem. And I remember people giving me advice about things, and I just kind of went like, yeah, whatever, man. Yeah, everything that I feel like is valuable to me today, this is a cliche answer to this question, everything that's valuable to me today came from royally fucking something up, you know? This is the only lessons that have actually stuck are things that went really badly and you just figure out how to navigate them. Like texting while driving. I don't think I would, I don't even think there's something I would know how to say, because I think literally the only thing I could say was it's all gonna take longer and be harder than you think, you know? But even then, you don't know what that means, right? When someone says like, this project is gonna take 7 years of your life, you're like, that's too big of a number for me to comprehend, right? It's just like, you just have to go do it. Yeah, but I mean, me at that age, I was just gonna do whatever I wanted to do, hell or high water. I was very, very committed, and I don't have that energy anymore. It's just time beats it out of you, you know, which I'm kind of grateful for, because it was an anxious way to live.
Okay, and can you tell us what you're working on next? You can say no.
Neo City Express 2. No, that's not what we're done. No. So we did semi-announce that there's a studio called Ivy Road that I started with Carlos Amandra, co-creator of Gone Home, and Daniel Rosenfeld, C418 of Minecraft, and a bunch of other brilliant, talented folks, an incredible team of people that we've sort of gathered over the years. And we partnered with Annapurna and their games division. Are we rivals now? Is that how that works? Are we
No, I'm big fans.
Oh, okay. I'm big fans of you. Yeah, so we're working with them on a new thing that took a lot longer and was a lot harder than I was expecting. it's, I mean, there will be more about, I actually pretty soon, like, we should actually be talking about it, before too long, but, yeah, it's very different. It's very, very different. It's funny going back over all of this stuff now and being like, oh, this is the old me, right? This is the stuff I used to work on, and what I've been doing now is like so in a different direction that it's almost like I have to shift gears a little bit, you know. But I hope it doesn't feel too alien, you know. I hope it feels like there's a kind of thread to it. It's scary. It's really scary to feel like this is a totally different kind of experience.
Yeah, well, wishing you all the best.
Thank you.
Very excited to see what it is. And let's thank Davey for his time. Someone got the time. 8:30? 50? Oh no, I took too long. Okay, we can do a few. We can do like one or two questions. We'll do 2 questions. All right, let's get these 2 first.
Hey, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem.
Can you talk a little bit about when you're making Stanley and like looking for a narrator and kind of coming across Kevin Writing's work, and like if there was a moment that you remember where you're like, oh, this is the guy?
A lot of game development is hard, tenacious work over long periods of time. That one was just dumb luck. There's no other way to explain it. There's a voice casting website called voice123.com, and I used it to like hire randos for like student projects at school. And so I was like, I need a narrator for my thing. I was like, you know, it's like BBC style, like very calming kind of. I was in my head, I had it exactly. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna find this person. So I put out a casting call, $120. That's what I offered for the whole game. $120. And it sounds like I was like had no money, and so I get some responses, and the second one that I turn on, the second audition that I got, because I had like an audition piece of the first portion of the script, and I click on the first one, whatever. Click on the second one, it's Kevin, and he just goes, "This is the story of a man named Stanley." I just hear his voice. For that 1 second, I hit pause on the thing. I literally got up, I stood up and danced around. I was like, there's no way. Like, is every second audition gonna be the genius, brilliant? No, all of them were not good. And it was just Kevin was there, and I was, what in the world? And I later found out, I didn't know this at the time, I didn't know this for a number of years. I later found out that Kevin, on that particular morning, was very hungover. And he had a lot of wine the night before, and he woke up and saw a thing in his inbox for like an audition that he could do, and he was like, fuck it. And he did it, and he just fired it off. And he was like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. And then what the funny thing was, it was 2 years of making the game before I actually got back to him and, hey, remember that thing you sent me 2 years ago? Well, here's the thing. I was like, oh, that's very nice. And then it all kind of blew up, and you know, so that was just luck, just luck.
Okay, who's the other person on this side? Thank you.
Hey, great talk, thank you. Sorry, my question was, you talked a lot about your inspiration growing up from film and twists. I was wondering what your current inspirations are, like what drives you creatively at the moment?
Like I said, I get a lot of people who, you know, because this is kind of like somewhat of an older sensibility, I recognize that there's a lot of like, I would say a sarcasm that comes through in this work, and there's almost a kind of like distancing effect of, especially in Stanley Parable, there's a lot of, you know, like dodging and feinting and maneuvering, and I feel like there's often this feeling of being kept at a distance. And I would say that for me personally, what's really kind of shifted over the years is that I've begun to feel more and more of an interest in small, intimate connections between people that are like less showy and sort of more quiet and understated, and that with developments in human beings coming through in a way that feels real but exaggerated to show what is real in a way that could be hard to see otherwise if you don't expand it out a little bit. I mean, God, in the last bunch of years, what BoJack Horseman managed to do, what Better Call Saul managed to do. I mean, those are TV shows that I watched, and I was like, how do you get so much across in so little, And that was just so exciting to me. And then, God, I mean, every story person on earth has already, said this a million times, but it's like you play Disco Elysium and you're just like, how, right? Like, how is it possible to make something like this? And for so much humanity, to be in every word of that thing. Getting something across without calling a lot of big attention to yourself and to your, flamboyant sort of formalist tricks is really hard. And I think it's become more exciting to me to see if through actual real craft and subtext that you could maybe say as much as with the big showy thing. But I really only have, those kinds of the model of giants like that to look to, and I don't know. I would like to try to create something like that, maybe, perhaps.
Okay, let's do one more question. That's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah, first off, I've been in film school for a year as well, and I can tell you that I got that exact same question.
Okay, yeah.
Around 5 years ago, this point, but still.
Yeah.
But my question was like, what kind of is your focus, I guess, these days? With like, you have a bigger team, probably, and working with other people. Like, what do you focus on your day-to-day more now?
Well, the thing with having a bigger team is that it's very complicated. We just had 2 great talks about how complicated it gets when you have all these people working together, which of course is wonderful that you get to make all these amazing things that would never have been possible otherwise. But it's very, very difficult to learn how to get everybody on the same page. And when you're coming from something like Darkest Dungeon, you have such a model to go on, not of the specific game, but of principles and values, right? And so you can at least organize your team around values. These are the things that we know are important to us. Building a team from scratch and building a whole new thing from scratch is like, building 2 planes at the same time in midair. Because the team is a whole thing all on its own. And now, I'm getting to the point with our development where, I used to be I was in like management, right? I was like overseeing people and looking at what people were doing and trying to help steer things. And then I got super burnt out doing that. And then I said, all right, everybody, you do whatever you want to do. And then we had a sort of pirate ship phase of development. And it was great. I was like, this is way easier for me. And then they were like, hey, this has been fun and all, but can you please actually try to offer opinions on things? So I was like, okay. And it's just it takes a lot of time to find people who you trust to take over things, right? Like, I do very little in administration now, and what I try to really focus on is like the quality of our game and the writing in it and the way that story unfolds. And I'm very, very grateful that I have people supporting me who are talented enough to be able to handle those things and not have to worry about it, not have to be like, oh, is this going to be all right? No, it's going to be fine, right? That person's super talented. And I look forward to one day getting to make a project with the team already in place and not building only one plane at a time in the air in free fall.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Davey.
Thank you so much for having me.